Shane, I hit live without the greetings. Wagwan pop guy, big up yourself. For those of you that are joining in, get your notebooks, get your pen. Shane, I left my notebook. I need pen and paper. There's pure wisdom that will be coming from Odessa, Thornhill, Doctorate of Natural Medicine, joining us today. You know, so I am just like, I need a pen and paper, Shayna. And we want to just, you know, today, I mean, this month, we're observing International Women's Month. And, you know, how fitting to have someone such as Odessa Thornhill come out and talk about women. But more importantly, I just want to give a moment of silence. Oh boy, I'm just putting on. Yeah. A moment of silence I'd like to give to our queens, our ancestors. What is your auntie's name?
Damaris.
Marjorie
Nicholson.
Damaris?
Marjorie Nicholson.
Damaris Marjorie Nicholson. We just want to give a moment of silence to the CEO, Roots Reggae. I've just lost her. A woman who lost her battle, but I don't even know if she lost her battle to cancer, but it's a woman who fought, she won, and she is now transitioned and is with the ancestors, and just want to acknowledge them. So I'm going to invite Odessa. I'm not seeing it come here. It's not coming up. And thank you for those that have joined in. And just bear with us for a moment while we just invite the guest of the hour, Odessa Thornhill. We are going to be speaking today about womb wellness on another level, even beyond. Okay, we're just having a little bit of difficulties. On another level beyond just eating well, on another level of having good herbs and detoxing. Odessa will bring us to just another way of thinking, a universal way of thinking of how we could align our wellness, our womb wellness, particularly as women. And just bear with us while we wait for her to join. Oh, there she is. Did you see her? Okay. Okay, I'm just going to invite Odessa one more. Fine.
Hi there.
And there you are. Okay. I was just looking down. How are you?
I'm doing well. Yourself? How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. We just took a moment just to acknowledge our ancestors that we just most recently lost a loved one dear to the Roots Reggae Hub family, Shana McCullough, the CEO's auntie. So she was lost her battle with cancer, you know, and
wow.
So just today. So beautiful woman, you know, great energy. She was in remission at one point and then just,
My
kind of
condolences.
got blindsided. Yeah, and it's so critical too because we need to be able to pass on wellness to our children.
Yes.
And there's so many details that we're gonna learn about today that will bring us to understanding how critical it is to have these conversations with our parents. Because I honestly, when we get into it, I don't remember what time I was born. It was day or night. It just kind of, I don't remember, but we will get into that. So once we start to share about it. Again, today for listeners that have just tuned in and those that are on Instagram and Twitter, we have with us today womb wellness coach Odessa Thornhill, Doctor of Natural Medicine. And welcome, Odessa.
Thank you for having me again. I appreciate it.
Yes, and we do have some news too. We will be having Odessa on once a month for the next 6 months, joining us on one Wednesday of the month. And we'll get into more of a series of things with regards to womb wellness. And at the same time, we want you guys to have your questions. Put those questions in the questions corner there and be able to maybe even have suggestions of topics that we can discuss that are important to you. Welcome, DJ Dr. Jones. Welcome, Rose Gold. Big up yourself.
I have
Welcome,
a question.
Steve
Is
Adi. And thank you, guys.
Am I buffering? I just want to make sure. Am I buffering right now? I am.
Yeah,
Okay.
you are.
Let
you
me
are buffering.
let me hop off and hop right back on. Okay. Let me just do that.
Okay, sounds good. Fantastic. And Shannon, maybe in the meantime, between time, we could just run a little track or something, maybe from...
Pardon?
Maybe we could run a little track, maybe from Judy Mowatt, Woman. I never gave you the songs, I know. She's like... Judy, anything about woman, Enough respect to all the women out there, enough respect to all the cancer survivors. Big up to my mommy. Big up to the mother of Roots Reggae Hub, and the grandma. Look at that, all that. And today we're going to be talking about awareness of self as we wait for Odessa Thornhill to rejoin us. Let's do that again.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. And I told the listeners and the viewers, get your notebook out because I had I actually left my notebook at home. So but it's okay. I'm taking new notes. It's all good. I have my digital aspect of it. Today we're going to be just examining awareness of woman, awareness of self on another level. And again, we're welcoming Odessa Thornhill, Doctorate of Natural Medicine. And just take it away, Odessa. I wanted you to just tell us, beyond the herbs, beyond the good food that we could eat and all the exercise. You took us on another level in one of your podcasts to the Gregorian calendar. But actually, even before we get there, I want you to just tell our listeners about yourself before we just get into this, so they know who we're talking to.
Okay. Yes, I've been around the block. So my name is Odessa. I call myself a womb wellness coach. I focus very much on women and their health and their reproductive wellness. And I also focus on just getting people to understand wellness from a holistic model, which includes the mind, the body, the emotions, the spirit, your karma, what you're coming in with, because we're more than just the physical body. And so I've been doing this work for 20 years now. I've been studying, I have been taking classes, I have had mentors for upwards of 10 years. I have immersed myself in many different forms. I remember one time I was applying for you know, traditional Chinese medicine for a program, and the president of the school was like, "You have 15 modalities. What do you want?" And I
So
said to her,
you're
I said,
quite the
"Well,
scholastic.
yeah, you know, it's a deep passion." And I said to her, you know, I was taught by my teacher, one of my teachers, one of my first teachers. She said to me, you know, a good therapist or somebody who really knows the body has upwards of 10 modalities, 10 ways of accessing the body, because what works for one person doesn't always work for the next person. And I really see how this comes into play, because even when I have conversations with my therapist, I have a therapist, when I, you know, have conversations with my doctors, when I have conversations with the people who are working, you know, with me, you know, I can see where, you know, they lack that, like, you know, someone can fit this
The
mold, but they
knowledge,
can't
certain
fit the
knowledge.
other mold. This is it, you know what I mean? Or when we go to see our doctor and the doctor prescribes birth control for everything across the board for everyone, that's not the case,
Mhm.
you know? So that's how I approach the work. I've been doing this for a long time. I was born and raised in Montreal. I live now in Toronto.
Bon oui, bon oui.
Yes, 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 bilingual. I have 4 children, 3 of which were birthed at home.
Beautiful.
And one of them, my first one, I had an epidural. So I know what I'm
You know
talking
both
about.
ends of the spectrum.
Yes, I've done a little bit of everything. So when I'm speaking about the work, when I'm speaking, you know, about experience, it's from live experience. You know what I mean? It isn't just regurgitated information, because that's what a lot of people tend to do. Also, is just regurgitate what they've heard. Yeah.
Yes. Even for me, I'm when I was listening to one of your podcasts, I could identify how well studied you are, and the enthusiasm just to bring us to this next level of understanding of like how, you know, how the Gregorian calendar has really affected cycles of our life, both the women
Yes.
and even the men. Today we're looking at aspects of also too we recognize Black Mental Health Week. So how it affects the mental health and how these, you know, things are passed on. And then, so if you could just share with our listeners about this divine knowledge about the Gregorian calendar, because I've always wanted someone to talk about this.
Yes,
Bring it,
yes.
girl.
Okay, like so much to talk about, right? Well, first of all, it's important for us to it's important for us to come into the recognition that we are cyclical beings, right? We're taught to look at life from a linear experience. You know, the week starts on Monday, and the weekday finishes on Friday. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? The weekend is on Sunday. That's over, and you start a new week. And so we move like this throughout our weeks. And then, you know, the month is over and that's it. You know what I mean? And then we get to the end of the year and that's it. You've completed the year and you moved on. And so we do this, and we're chasing hours, we're chasing minutes, we're chasing money, we're chasing the bag, you know what I mean? And we're chasing after an ideal that isn't that wasn't created for our well-being. It was created for war and greed. Okay.
Mhm.
The Gregorian calendar that we're living with, that we are using, you know, we have the Julian calendar, the Gregorian calendar. So this is like, you know, our 30, 31, 28, 29 and a half, who have a birthday, who don't have a birthday. You know what I mean?
14.
Like, yeah. So looking at this calendar here, it's, you know, like they're taking elements and adding elements without any regards to the person. It very much has to do with an agenda of war and greed, right? Like when you're looking at, you know, like the 8th month would be October, you know what I mean? But who, you know, it sound like this and it looked like that, and you know what I mean? Like it throws you off. So that's the first part. Okay.
Yes.
Now the reason why I talk about Give thanks for that love. The reason why I talk about cyclical beings is because, first of all, we're living on a round planet. You know what I mean? We're living on a round planet, and we're creatures of habit, right? And so we're always looking for similarities. We're looking for habits. We work in patterns. This is what we do. And, you know, I remember having conversations with friends who work in mental health, and they're like, listen, my friend always does this on a Tuesday. You know what I mean? Or when you look at women and their cycles, more specifically women and their cycles, you know, you can see, or you can tell when a woman is close to her menstrual cycle. You can see, you know what I mean, when this is going to happen, or, you know what I mean? Like we naturally fall into these habits. Now, I like to tell women who come into my sphere to use your birthday as your day one, because this January 1st, that's a fiscal new year. One of the original New Years, okay, but the original New Year was changed in 1752. It used to be March 25th.
Yes,
But they changed the new year because of there was a you know, a conflict of dates, right? So this is the first thing. Like when we look at nature, when we look at how nature unfolds itself, you know what I mean? Everybody feels as though they're waking up in spring. You know what I mean? This is when we have the birth of babies, quote unquote. This is when we have, you know, the leaves and the trees and the birds, and everybody starts to come alive. So this was one of the original, you know what I mean, New Year's. That is considered the original New Year, right?
Which date was that again?
That
When
was
that?
March. That was March 25th. So you can look
March
this up,
25th. Okay,
right?
great.
Spring, March 25th. So this is right around
We're
the
right
equinox.
where we are now.
This is it, right around the vernal equinox. That, you know, we have the spring equinox and we have the fall equinox, the vernal equinoxes, right? Then we also have our solstices, our winter solstice and our summer solstice. So, you know, when we, you know, we're always telling everybody, you know, make your New Year's wishes and everything by January 1st, and everybody will just hype up and big up by January 1st, and then by January 10th, like you've fallen off. You know what I mean? And the thing with that is you never really had anything to dig into. You weren't working with a natural cycle. You know what I mean? It's like a random arbitrary date that was chosen, you know what I mean, to fulfill an agenda. Now, you don't have to quote me on this. You can go and do your own research. Yes. Right? So I always tell women, first of all, use your birth date as your day one. That's your day one. Right? Because you need to have something to reference off of. Like you're talking about January 1st, you know what I mean? Like, okay, if you're doing your taxes, you know what I mean? If you have fiscal goals, go ahead and use that new year. And I mean, if you don't want to change a new year, don't even do that, but acknowledge your born day, your solar return, you know what I mean? Your earth day, right?
Is this the birth cycles that you're speaking about that like we spoke? Okay. And then
yeah, your and we haven't even gotten into the cycles yet. This is just
so this is not the cycles yet.
Yeah, this is ground zero.
Your new year. Your new year is your birthday.
That's right. Use your birth date as your new year. Yeah, and then break your year up into 4 cycles, into 4 quarters. You know what I mean? That's what I do. You know what I mean? Like you have, like my birth date was February 22nd. So for me, I'm looking at August 22nd as, you know, my halfway point of the year. And then I break it down March and November and May, June, whichever one. I got to go back and look at my dates again, right? But I follow them.
I'm taking notes. I'm going to break it into 4 quarters, which.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
Trust me.
Like, you know what I mean? So I always tell women, like, pay attention to what is always happening, because things are very confusing. So your birth date is a consistent occurrence in your life. The solstice and the vernal equinoxes, these are consistent in our lives. The seasons are always going to change, and no matter where you live on the planet.
Unless you're born February 29th.
Yeah, right?
About this.
You know what I mean?
I'm making joke.
But it's true. It's true.
Just, you know but when you said that, it's like, unless you're born 14, you know, if you're born February 29th, because the Gregorian calendar just really mashed that up.
It
You know,
really did. It's like you really only have, you know, like in 32 years, you have how many birthdays? You know what I mean? Like, you know?
oh no, but
So that's what I always tell women. You know what I mean? Like, you pay attention to your menstrual cycle, pay
yes.
attention to your birth cycle,
Hmm.
pay attention to the season changes, right? And then what's happening naturally around you. Like, if you just do that, you pull yourself away from the matrix in a way that gives you a perspective that puts you more in tune and in alignment with your own rhythm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then, self-awareness is something that we know it takes time. And I
Yeah.
find you talked a little bit about like, going to see different doctors and stuff like that. And they
Mm-hmm.
don't have the broader knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
that holistic knowledge, or even when you talk to a friend to relate to it, sometimes people have a tendency to compartmentalize
Okay.
these things. But then apart from it, it's really the knowledge of gaining that knowledge and awareness of, how you connect with the entire universe,
That's right.
the moon, everything. So
Everything.
but why you for talk about these
Everything.
cycles, the
Yeah.
lunar cycle, the solar cycle, the like these just things that you have to monitor. And again, as I guess you're saying, is how you interact with it as well.
Yeah.
Mike is
So
gone.
so I think I would start that by saying the physical body is able to monitor everything that's happening around us without the logical mind interfering. Right? So we know what's happening around us with the lunar cycle, the solar cycle, the planetary cycles, the
Visible.
constellations, you know what I mean? Solar flares, comet, everything you want to talk about. The physical body is aware of this. The physical body knows this, and it responds to it. We are spiritual beings. We are spiritual beings, and the physical body and the personality is how we interact with one another. So if the spirit is just that big, that vast, that great, and that grand, that we have this understanding of what God, the universe, and everything is. And if it is all of that, and we are all of that, then all of that is within us, and we are that. It is inside of us, and we have access to it.
This is
Okay.
it.
And so this is like the first concept that I always try to get people to understand, right? Because we are that. Okay. So that's the first thing. Now, I always, like, we're talking about these cycles because this is what is natural to us. This is what's happening to us. Every year, the sun is going to pass through and this is the thing, whether you believe in astrology or not, right? Whether you understand astronomy or not, like, the sun is going to pass through these constellations every single year. It's going to do this, right? You can call it a season, you can call it a zodiac sign. You know what I mean? I know that I was born in the late winter. Okay. Whether you call the late winter Pisces or whether you call the late winter, that's just what it is, right? That's the season that we're born in. And so that I was born in. And so some of the original calendars that we were following were like the lunar cycle, and the lunar calendar was exact. It was 3 weeks in a month
Mm-hmm.
and 10 days in a week. So 1 week was 10 days,
Okay.
and 1
30.
month was 3 weeks. And it was exact because the lunar cycle, it doesn't change. It's the same. It's 29 and a half days, right? And as we've talked about previously, women can find their cycles, you know what I mean, and match themselves somewhere within that lunar phase. Just want to give up a hello and good day to everyone who's joining, saying hi and giving the love
Yes.
there. And so recognizing this, right? And why is the lunar cycle important? Well, we know that the lunar cycle has control over the waters on the planet, right? And when the moon goes new, when it goes dark, when the moon goes full, we can see the coming in of the tide, the rising of the tide, the going down of the tide. If you work in hospitals, nurses and doctors will tell you people go batshit crazy around the full moon.
Yes.
You know what I mean? There are a lot of, people in labor and delivery who will tell you that there are more births that might happen around the full moon. There are a lot of women who will tell you their menstrual cycles will start around the new moon. Not every woman will have that cycle, but a lot of them will, right? So this is the lunar cycle, recognizing that. I know for myself, when I was in the throes of postpartum depression, you asked me what day it was, and I was somewhere back last week. You know what I mean? And it was only when I really started to settle in and connect to my cycle and connect my cycle to the lunar cycle was I able to figure out where I was. Now,
Mentally, just like
mentally,
yeah.
yeah, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Totally.
so if we put that cycle to the side and we look at the solar cycle now, right? Like we do this every year, everybody. Every single year we talk about, we're coming into spring season now, you know what I mean? And everything is, the days are getting longer, but we'll celebrate it, you know what I mean, by, looking at Easter and looking at the resurrection of Christ. Why is this? You know what I mean? Why are we celebrating Easter and the resurrection of Christ on the same holidays? You understand what I'm saying? We don't ask ourselves these questions. We just try to dash away the things that we think don't really matter, but they actually have a very tight connection. You know what I mean? When we come to the summer months, when, the sun is at its highest point in the sky, you know what I mean? We recognize this. The school is finished now, you know what I mean? And we have the summer months to be able to go out and palaf and frolic in the seasons. You know what I mean? When the fall time comes, everybody don't know. You might start to get mad because it start to chill up. You know what I mean? And you need
or even still hibernate energy,
this
like that
is it.
energy to hibernate to sleep.
This is it. This is exactly what it is. Like we follow these cycles naturally, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
We're
somebody who is born in, a winter month might have a bit more of an introversion character than someone who was born in a summer month, right? Because this is where everything is very much out in the open and the brilliance of the sun is there. You know what I mean? But every year the sun goes through the same process. You know what I mean? And you may be doing things in the winter time that you may not be doing in the summer. You know what I mean? And then vice versa. You might have like a particular trauma or something that's happening to you every particular, you know what I mean, time of the year. So noting this, you know what I mean? And noting your birth date. And this is something that you brought up at the beginning. You said you don't know your birth time. I find this to be so intriguing. How come when you are born, and how come when you die, the doctors are taking note of the exact time? When you're born, they mark this. When you die, they mark this. But you don't know this. You don't find that suspicious? You don't find that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so they know all of this. You know what I mean? Like if we wanted to even
they're measuring this, they're aware of it, they're observing it.
They are. They take your birth information and they actually create a digital version of you on the black market. And you have money that is in an account specifically for your
Girl, when we touch that topic, because
right.
I've
We're
been looking
going
for that
right
money.
on inside of there. Okay.
Before they change all the little policy, them and ping pong and it can
you understand? But you see what I'm saying? But this is the truth. You know what I mean? And there are people who know how to actually access this and use this information for their benefit. You know what I mean? But they don't want you to know this. Queen, you're right. Yo, it's straight truth we're talking here. You know what I mean? When we talk about women and birth, just to kind of take a moment, you know what I mean? When a woman is birthing, birth, we're talking about the birth of a child, but berth is talking about the bottom of a boat. Right? We're talking about admiral law. The bottom of the boat carries the load, and the load of the boat comes into the dock, and the doctor takes the birth and puts it on a certificate and puts it on listen, let me tell you something. We have to understand what is happening to us and around us and why. for you to be able to take back your power. And this is why understanding these natural cycles are important, because they have us living on artificial time. They have us
and this is
living
the
in
thing too. I wish I had my other notebook, because he said about the TC when he talked about
TCM.
the
Yeah, the body clock, you know what I mean? There's so many different, you know what I mean? Like every hour, every couple of hours, the energy in your body shifts. It shifts with the sun. You know what I mean? Like I was explaining to somebody, you know, like in the morning time when you wake, or like example, there are people who will wake up every night between 1 and 3 o'clock. Clockwork, they'll wake up like that. There are people who won't wake up at 1 or 3, but they'll wake up from 3 to 5.
Yeah.
Right? Between the hour of 1 to 3 is the hour of the liver. Sometimes if you have liver problems, this is being shown at that time.
Is this
If you have
AM or PM? AM?
This is AM, 1 to 3 in the morning time. Right? I noticed whenever my children would have asthma attacks, if they didn't have them during the day, if they had them early in the morning, they would have them between the hour of 3 and 5. That's the hour of the lungs and the large intestine. Between the hour of 5 and 7, this is the hour of the large intestine. So people who get up and move their bowels first thing in the morning, they're moving in their own alignment. Like I tell people, like for me, if I don't go once, twice in the morning time, like I feel it for the day, like going, you know what I mean? Like between the hours of 3 to 5, most people have a dip in their energy. Right? This is the hour where we start getting into the kidneys and the bladder. I had a conversation with a colleague, and the colleague said to me, she was saying, you know, I'm feeling for salty foods nowadays. My ears peaked up. I said, salty foods. I said, okay. And I said, what else? And she says, you know, by the time I get to 3 o'clock in the evening, I'm starting to feel tired and I'm dipping. And I said, well, it sounds like there could be something going on with your kidneys. And she says, really? She's not really into this kind of stuff too deep. And I said, yeah, it sounds like there could be something going on with your kidneys. You know, my girl went to the doctor, and the doctor told us that she has a problem with her kidneys.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
So,
it's aligned with that time. What's that time? What is it called? Can you say that one more time for listeners?
So between the hours of 3 to 5 and 5 to 7, we're looking at the kidneys and the bladder. You understand? If you look up body clock, traditional Chinese body clock, TCM body clock, you'll see, it'll give you basic 2-hour increments where the energy of the chi goes into a particular organ system and it animates that system. So it's the best time of the day to do whatever for that system. Right? A lot of people have a dip in energy, right? A lot of people have a dip in energy around that time. So this is where it's like you need to support your kidneys. You know what I mean? And so when we learn these things, when we come into this, when we allow ourselves to flow naturally, because what also happens is like we'll get the inspiration to do things and we won't do them. You know, there are a lot of people who will tell me, you know, I naturally wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I'm just laying there and I can't go back to sleep. I was like, okay, so maybe you should get up and, you know, you should start your day. Start your day with ceremony, start your day with thanks, start your day with drinking water, start your day with reflections. Yeah. And they're like, I don't really want to get up. Okay, but spirit is waking you up. Your body is waking you up. And if you wake up naturally at 5 a.m. every morning, I guarantee you, if you drink a whole bunch of water, your bowels are going to move, right? So we have the natural inclination where the body wants to do things, but we will fall off. We tend to fall off rhythm. We suppress the natural wisdom of the body for tradition, for the concrete mind that does not naturally connect itself to the functioning of the body.
Right. Right. And again, you've also talked about as well another system, so kind of like the birth cycle, and then there's also the reproductive cycle. That I found absolutely fascinating, that you started as young as from birth to age 7. If you could just tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about that as well, like being aware of that, because all these systems, you got to put this together.
You do. I mean, you know what it is. It's really just paying attention. Unless you dive deep into it and you study it, you know what I mean? Like with somebody or on your own. It's really just about letting yourself pay attention to what's happening to your body, what's happening to your mind, what your emotions are telling you, what your intuition is telling you, because you will naturally fall in sync and in alignment. So within traditional Chinese medicine, because this is one of the other modalities that I trained in, they talk about, first of all, I need to back up a little bit and talk about the different forms of energy, right? Even just talking about Jing and talking about Qi. We've heard about Qi, we've heard about prana, right? So Qi is that animation of spirit, right? It's the energy that animates the body. And so this is what goes through each organ, you know what I mean? It's like it's what animates the blood. The energy of the spirit is held within the blood. Like there's just so much really beautiful, there's so many beautiful symphonies that are happening within the body. But then we also have something else called Jing. And Jing is our reproductive energy, right? And so when a person is experiencing reproductive health issues, one of the first things that we're going to look at is your Jing, is the energy of your Jing. And so this can be communicated as, you know, being born with, like, example, you know, so your dear friend who recently passed away, you know, like how was her health? You know what I mean? Like, was she born with frail health? Was she born with strong health? You know what I mean? Like, was her candle very thick and tall? Did she have a very robust health and a long life? Was her candle frail and tall? Did she have you know, frail health but live a long life? Was her candle short and frail? Did she have a short life with frail health, right? So this is how we're kind of quantifying that Jing, you know, and this is like just looking at congenital health, right? So when we talk about our sexual energy, everybody has it. It's a slower moving energy. It's what you were born with, and it's how it helps to animate you throughout your life. Now we go through cycles. We go through 7 years as men, as women, 7 years as men, and 8 years as women. So excuse me, I said it wrong. It's every 7 years as women and every 8 years as men. And so we go through cycles. The first 7 years, if you notice, that's when a child energetically separates from their parents, from their mother. The first 7 years. Ever notice by the time the child gets 6, 7, they start to, you know, ting up themselves.
Independent, you know? And yes.
Yeah, this is it. They want their independence, you know what I mean? And then when you move into the next 7 years, you get into your early teenage years. So normally this is where puberty would begin. I mean, because we have so much hormonal interference, we have right? We have girls starting their cycles as early as 8, 9 years old, you know, 7 years old sometimes. But the next cycle we have is 14 years old. And so this is where you recognize by the time you get to that teenage years, you know, 14, 15, you know, 16, you kind of start to, you know what I mean? Like you recognize that you enter into another cycle. You know what I mean? By the time you reach 21, this is where you're considered an adult, right? So I'm looking at the 7-year cycle. You know what I mean? And for, you know, like you start off as a child, you separate from your parents. Your next one is where you begin puberty. The next one after that is where you're considered to be an adult. If you look at the next cycle again, we jump to the end of the 20s. And this is where many would experience their, what we call your Saturn return. And this is where it's like everyone starts to get serious about life. You know, my 20s are finished and, you know, I'm starting to enter into my 30s. So if you haven't already hitched up and married, you might begin to do this now. You know what I mean? You might be at your sexual peak for some people. Right? And then when we move into the next 7 years, we're coming to the end of the 30s, right? Mid to end 30s. And this is where you start to notice, oh, you know what I mean? I don't have the same kind of energy. People start to talk about the muscles them, and, you know, you start to creak, and, you know, you may not be feeling like you have as much strength, and you start to notice your energy start to wane. It starts to reduce a little bit, right? And then we move into the next 7 years, and then you start getting into menopause, you know, menopause, as some people call it, you know what I mean? And, yeah, right? And so a woman will experience roughly 400 menstrual cycles in her life. And so by the time she gets to that age, you know what I mean, where quote unquote menopause, or your second spring, begins, right? This is where you notice a change, you know what I mean? And this is not a bad thing. This is where a woman really begins to enter into her queendom. You know what I mean? Where she really begins to enter into that, understanding of herself, for men and for women as well. You know what I mean? And you enter
Right.
into the crone phase and the crone stage. And so we move in these layers. Like if you go back and you count, you know what I mean, the 7 years and the 8-year cycles for men, you know what I mean? You can start to pinpoint very specific things that have happened in your life. We haven't even gotten into your numerology, right? Because even through your numerology, everybody has specific cycles. You know what I mean? Every 9 years you go through something. So when we can clarify within ourselves, you know what I mean, how these cycles are working, when we can clarify how we are responding to the environment around us without, thinking too much about it, but really just being and going, then you naturally begin to attune. One thing that I remember mentioning to someone, especially when I began this journey of tuning into myself, this journey of womb wellness, this journey of really allowing myself to be guided. And I was doing some work really studying the cycles of the moon, looking at, how the moon, how people respond when the moon enters each sign, right? So like example, my moon, when I was born, the moon was in Gemini. So I have a Gemini moon. Some people were born, everyone has a different cycle. And I remember I was home and I was thinking of something, and then immediately I started to feel extremely emotional. I was like, whoa, what just happened? It just switched from one thing to the next. And I was like, yo, let me check and see what's happening. And so said, so done. The moon had just went from Gemini into Cancer. And so it went from a very cerebral sign into a very emotional sign. And I responded to that. And I was like, wow, that is so interesting. Or another thing I'll do, or I used to do when I wasn't trusting of myself, I would, pay attention to things that I'm thinking, like, this is coming up very prominently in my mind right now. And I would look outside of me at my immediate environment. What are people around me doing? How are they responding? Oh, people are saying the same thing. Wait a second. What's happening in the greater cycles around me?
Right.
Oh,
the other cycle.
this is what's exactly right. So when you begin to work with the greater cycles, this is where you start to awaken your soul consciousness.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And so when we talk about soul consciousness, it like people talk about the soul very arbitrarily, but it's a little bit more complex than that. You know what I mean? We as melanated people, there is something about our melanin that connects us very deeply to soul. Yeah. And so it imbues our body, it infuses us, and it infuses every single thing that we do. Exactly. You know what I mean? There's something very, very special in particular. They have 2 different medical books, one on Black people and one on white people. Right. And they're even talking now, it's starting to come out now, that melanin is used for AI. Melanin is used for, all kind of computers. Melanin is a computer. But anyway, this is a whole other conversation here.
Yes,
right?
It is. That's like some serious. I was like, yeah.
Right.
Serious stuff.
But when we talk about soul consciousness, right, when we are living a human experience, but we are constantly striving for soul awareness. That's what we're striving for. That's what everyone is striving for.
And there's something I noticed, like when you were talking about like not when we're not aligned, and that our bodies, our physical bodies, are aware of all these cycles. The universal ones, the ones that we're physiologically going through, metaphysically, all these cycles it's aware of. And we are now conditioned from that Gregorian perspective, calendar, all kinds of influences, processed food, everything, just different things that are just keeping us off cycle. And I could just see the war. And it's funny how we're observing Black Mental Health Week and see the wars in our mind, just being that off, and knowing how intrinsic we are. We're like really special. We're really detailed. When they said that we were carefully woven in this womb, like there's just details, but then there's I want to just go into, because I know just in the interest of time too. You actually, so we did touch a little bit about the menstrual cycle as well, but you actually also deal with something called MAP. So where
Yeah.
that in itself, it connects, it's really from the mind aspect, it connects to like your body in itself. If you could just share listeners, how our thoughts affect our health. And we
Yeah.
always hear in the Bible, they say words are life and whatnot,
Yeah.
and the Rasta man say words, sound, power, vibration.
Yeah.
And I know that there is a chemical release from the mind to wherever. If you could just break it
Oh
down a little
God.
bit.
I'm like, you want to start a whole other,
Oh
whole
wait, oh
other.
wait. See, because you see, that's how deep you are. Because I'm now touching. You touched a little bit. I'm thinking I'm touching.
Yeah. No, it's true. So
Right? Because
let's touch the surface of this. So so you said a couple of different things, but
okay.
basically the map, what I call the MAAP, this is a protocol that I developed within my program. I just want to give thanks for that love from Lady Renee. I see you, sis. This is a protocol that I developed within the womb cleanse protocol that I work with people. And so the map is called the multidimensional awareness and assessment protocol, right? The multidimensional awareness and assessment protocol. So when you are taking stock of your health, when you're looking at your health process, most of the time, if you had an illness, the question is, when did it begin? What were the symptoms? What have you done since then? And how is it right now? There's way more to it, right? We know for a fact that there is trauma that gets lodged into the body. When trauma is not processed properly or at all, the trauma gets lodged into the body and it creates beliefs that we carry in perpetuity, and it creates habits, right? It creates conditions in our bodies. And so based off of, your birth trauma is one thing, right? How you were born, you carry that for the rest of your life. If you were born a C-section, right, you might start things but not be able to stop them. You know what I mean? If you had a traumatic birth, you will carry some of that with you. If you've had any trauma that has happened to you before the age of 3, before the age of 7, if you like at these same milestones, 7, 14, 21, right? All of these things, they live in our body from the time that you're conceived in the womb of your mother. From that time that your physical body is created in the womb of your mother, your cells are constantly downloading information. Okay, information from your ancestors, information from your parents, information from the environment around you, from your social conditioning. So when somebody comes to me and they say, okay, Odessa, I'm suffering with this particular issue, we're going to look at this issue, but we're also going to look at all of the other things that come with it. You know what I mean? Like when did you have these traumas? What was happening around these traumas? One test I can give anybody: if ever you're at home doing something, and all of a sudden you bump your toe, or you fall down, or you have an accident, pay attention to what happened right before you did it. Chances are you were thinking about something that had the vibrational equality of the accident that you had. Chances are, okay, you were thinking about something that triggered it, right? So anything that you've experienced in your previous moments, right, these moments, you embed them, and so they will show up as your issues. They'll, you know what I mean, like they will chemicalize and they will concretize themselves in your
That's
physical
what I was
body,
looking at, because I remember like
right?
this, even just a pregnant woman in itself. This is how they are transferring this information through the umbilical cord. So
Exactly.
this is when it gets you thinking into what is this like information? It's liquid. It's electric.
Exactly.
It's energy. It's this energy that has information.
Exactly. So I remember one woman we had a conversation with, we were in a group setting, we were having a conversation, we were talking about this same thing, about what we are holding and how we are transmuting information and how we're carrying it. And she was talking about while she was pregnant, she was very emotional, you know, like she was having a lot of grief and she had to hold herself strong, and you know, she wasn't trying to, you know, break down and everything because she was aware of her pregnancy. And she said she's very clean. She's a religious woman, you know what I mean? Very, you know, devout and, you know, to her cause. And she said when her son was born, her son was shaking. Anytime he would cry, he would shake. He would shake. And the doctors thought that she was taking drugs.
Mm-hmm.
She was also a Black woman. The doctors thought that she was taking drugs, but now when she stops to think about it, when she looks at her son and how he responds to emotional experiences, he doesn't know how to cry. And so that's part of his response. And so she trained him. She trained him in utero, right? So this is an issue that he's carrying through his life now. Right, of being unable to express himself emotionally. I've heard of women who are unable to, you know, when they have their menstrual cycles, it doesn't flow. It doesn't flow. But then
Very
they'll have a
short, you mean?
gush.
Like,
No, they won't flow throughout the day, but they go to the bathroom and they'll have a gush, and I'll say, okay, well, how is your emotional health? And they say, well, I hold my emotions, and when everything builds up, this is when I blow. Right. So this is where you might be experiencing your clots. You understand what I'm saying? You know what I mean? If you have an issue with liver, excuse me, if you have an issue with anger, if you're dealing with passive anger, if you're dealing with chronic anger, if you're dealing with all these different things, it's going to show up in your liver. It's going to show up in your liver health. You know what I mean? If you have a stagnated liver, you can also have clots in your menstrual cycle. You know, like it's all connected. If you have an issue with, you know, receiving, you know what I mean? If you have a difficult time receiving from people, if you have a difficult time receiving good things that are happening to you, you may have an issue with your pancreas. You may have an issue with diabetes. You may have an addiction to sugar because you are unable, based off of your life experiences and how you were trained, whoever taught you, you may not be able to receive properly. And so you look for the satisfaction in your external environment. You understand what I'm saying? Like if you have an issue with fear, this will play on your kidneys. It all shows up. So when we walk through the map process, we look at everything. We look at how does your tongue look? How is your tongue shaped? What's the color of your tongue? You know what I mean? What's happening with your eyes? How does your skin look? You know, how many times you go to the bathroom? Do you use the bathroom often? You know, all these different things. Like for women, we talk about, you know, the color of your discharge. We talk about every single thing, because your body is telling you what's happening. And the spirit is speaking to you. It's going to find different ways to tell you what it needs. Are you dreaming? How often do you dream? Do you not remember your dreams? What is recurring? You know what I mean? All of these things we talk about.
This is the things that I appreciate about natural medicine. I won't lie. Sometimes you are even looking for more. Like you might visit other doctors and therapists and whatnot. But I just appreciate this, literally this holistic and passionate approach where with regards to one's wellness. And I mean, I'm curious to know like a little bit more because I know we're going to be doing some more episodes. However, I'm curious to know like even what about like natural stones? You talked about like you have like the moonstone and stuff like that. Are those relevant? Is that relevant knowledge to gain as well in terms of like just having overall womb wellness? Are those things relevant? Do you suggest usage of those?
So I do use crystals, and you can most definitely use crystals for any illness, any issue. Hey. I got my moonstone. Where's my moonstone? I'm always wearing my moonstone. So, especially when I go to work with the babies, I use my moonstone. But yeah, most definitely. Like, so um, when we talk about crystals, we're looking at, this is where we start moving into color therapy, when we're looking at very much into vibrational therapy. Okay. Right. So what we have to understand is that crystals themselves, they have a matrix inside of them. They have grids inside of them, and they have different shapes and forms inside of them. Right. Like, it's really quite fascinating. And depending on the pressure that they were underneath, like when they were being formed and how the grid was shaped, it gives them the color. The grid will determine the color and the vibration that it's going to hold. Right. And because of the matrices inside of these stones, they hold that vibration. So that's why it's special, because they actually hold the vibration. And so what happens is, when you choose a stone, or when the stone chooses you, it's because you are needing to hold that particular vibration. So this is where we look at entrainment and entropy. And so entropy is what we all tend to go through. It's like, you're feeling good, you're not feeling good. You're feeling great, you're not feeling great. You're doing good, you're not doing good. And so this is where we're going up and down. And entrainment is when you're able to hold and sustain a particular vibration. And so this is what the crystals will do. So example, right, like moonstone is a stone that we would equate to the uterus, to menstrual health, to women's wellness, because of the vibration that it holds, right? And so I know, like, one of the first times I used moonstone without even knowing the depth, I remember putting it in my pocket. I put moonstone in one pocket and amethyst in the other. And I had strong cramps. I had strong cramps. And I tell you, within 10 minutes, the cramps were gone. Within 10 minutes, the cramps were done. They were finished. I couldn't find the cramps. Nowhere, they left.
You have to really know what you're doing with the stones as much as you get aware. Because I'm like, as much as I show all of the stones, I do want to get into that depth of, why I'm, what energies I need to pull. Just like even with herbs and stuff and food, you got to know if, you have to keep on keeping that balance. Know when to use garlic, when to,
It's quite, you know what I mean? It can be quite easy and it can be quite complex. If you understand, color therapy, if you understand the chakras, if you understand that red connects with the root, orange connects with the sacrum, you know what I mean? The hara, the sexual chakra, the uterus. Yellow connects us to the solar plexus, just above the belly button. Green connects us to the heart. Sky blue to the throat. Dark blue to the third eye. Purple to the crown. This is that's rudimentary colors. Look at the rainbow: red and yellow and pink and green, purple and orange and blue. It's right there. Right? The history is right there. Every single color connects us to a note. Red connects us to C. Orange connects us to D, right? And it goes on and on. And so every stone that has a color resonates with the chakra, that area of the body. And the chakra is where the nerve plexuses come together, right? And they form the organs. So anywhere 2 and 3 are gathered, right? That's what that is.
Wow.
And they connect us to the color. They connect us to the vibration. Right. So it's like, so I use them in womb healing, and women will use, yoni eggs. Women will use, different stones, quartz stones, whatever they want. Some will insert them into the vagina. Some will not. Some will just meditate with them. You know what I mean? Like, I've had friends tell me, they're like, Odessa, whatever you did to that darn stone, it got me pregnant. I'm like, oh shit.
You never do that to it. It was out of some form. This is it.
Well, you know what I mean? Like, I remember once I visited the south of France, and we were brought to a cave. They call them the grottes, and we went into the cave, and we saw some of these stones that had been there forming for 1.5 million years. It was awesome. Like, the stone was it was at least 2 stories high. Like, you're walking down, just watching this beautiful, huge matrix. You know what I mean?
Too, I'm sure.
This is it. You know what I mean? And so when we give ourselves that permission, you know what I mean? And one thing I'll tell people, even like if you get a stone, before you even look up what the stone means, keep the stone on you for 2 to 4 days.
Okay.
And just pay attention to what anything, any inspiration, any thoughts that come to you, just pay attention to them. Mark them down, note if anything is different. And at the end of the 2 to 4 days, then find out what the stone is and find out the quality of that stone and how it's talking to you.
Okay.
Right?
I do see some questions coming down. Again, listeners, I said, get your notebook out because I've been taking notes as well. You know, there's some questions and so forth. I have a lot more questions. Obviously, I'll definitely connect with your services because it's like I'm like, you know, sometimes you know, I always say, you know, you sometimes want to be simplistic about life, you know, or you want to, you know, okay, when did I have my last period, or you know, and calculate it, but knowing that it's more than that. A friend of mine, you know, for those of you that are just tuning in, we were talking earlier about the Gregorian calendar, and we were like, this is not making any sense. Like, the nature doesn't even line up. You know what I mean? It doesn't. It's all confused, and they'll create the snow if they have to, just to keep the season in place. You know, and I really feel we should be not following the Gregorian calendar. It's a mess.
It really is. But I do want to take a minute and just answer this here. So the question, the comment here is, I wonder sometimes if we are the entire stars in the universe and we come through the sun of our mother's egg. I will say yes, because Steve Otti, if you were there in the beginning, one of the first things that I said is the physical body encompasses every aspect of the universe. It does. Every aspect, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, karmic, cosmic, solaric, atmic, buddhic, monadic, like all of these layers are within the physical body, right? And so, and then if we bring it back to Mental Health Week and our people, you know what I mean? They did a doozy on us. They did a doozy on us. 500 years, more than that, but 500 years of erasure, of suppression, of gaslighting. You understand what I'm saying? While studying us. Right? And using our own systems against us. They've squared the circle. We are the circle and they've squared the circle. Okay? And so we don't know ourselves. We don't know our language. We don't know our gods. Okay? We don't know who we are. And so based off of that, this is why we're experiencing what we're experiencing. You're not allowed to experience emotions. I had a conversation with my uncle the other day, and my uncle said to me, my goodness, some of the conversations that my children and I are having, or you're having with your children, if we did that with our mother, we would have gotten slapped. You couldn't even talk about emotions.
So these things have been blocking. Oh, yeah.
You know, you understand what I'm saying?
And if you grew up in a Christian home, emotions were like demonic. You
understand what I'm saying?
Emotions, and there really are you know, are receptors and all that.
This is it. And so here you are, you know, walking around, you know, with literally like with the universe inside of you bubbling over. You know, you're so awesome and you're so great. You know what I mean? But you're not allowed to connect to it, because if you did, Lord have mercy. You understand what I'm saying? If you're considered demonic. You understand what I'm saying? And the next level to that is, well, you know, it's not pop culture. So like, what are you know what I mean? Like, what are you doing? You know? So when we talk about mental health, you know, I think it's just really important. You got to pull in everything. You got to pull in all aspects. Like I even go after these therapists and I'm like, you know, even therapy doesn't even include the whole being. No, it doesn't. It's, you know, it talks a lot and it helps
barely
a lot
touches
of
the archetypes. It barely.
You understand what I'm saying? I remember having conversations with my therapist, and I'm like, I'm trying to edge, you know what I mean, and get into the topic, and I'm like, she won't even be able to handle what I got to tell her. She wouldn't be able to handle it. Now our society seems void of emotion and is being labeled as being depressed. Exactly.
This is a big issue.
It's huge.
You know, and it creates a dishonesty as well.
That's right.
You know, in just how we relate.
That's right.
With each other, you know.
That's right. It's unhealthy. It's so unhealthy. you know? So my thing is like, back up. You know what I mean? It's going to feel weird. It's going to be bizarre. It might feel lonely. You know what I mean? You may have absolutely no clue what's going on, and it may look messy, but just back up. Back up and give yourself space. You know what I mean? Give yourself space. Just start to observe. You know what I mean? Like, take your birth date, look at the 4 seasons, you know, for those of us who are living in the area with 4 seasons, you know, and just kind of be present to what comes up, because then you start to connect to the elements.
Yeah.
Earth, air, wind, water, and ether. You know what I mean? And fire. You know, you begin to just kind of settle into yourself, your sovereign self. You know what I mean?
And it's important for us to, especially mothers or, you know, people who intend to have children, to really, really start to engage in this level of awareness, for even the children's sake. I gave my daughter a candlelight. You know, they always have their candles and whatnot, but I brought it to her for her to do it in the bathtub, and she was like, "Huh?" You know, next tutus. This girl has rose petals. She got all this in it, you know, and this was loving it. And then she set it up for me, you know, go and soak, you know. And these are the things that we can pass on to our children, so that they don't have to fall into certain, like, this being blocked. We're like really blocked where the knowledge is concerned of ourselves. Like I had to get fibroids only to learn that it's quite embarrassing that my mother had them and my eldest sister had them. That's when they told me.
Yeah. Right.
You know,
people will talk about it.
Like, you know, get to know each other, and especially as women, you know what I mean? Get to know how the women around us, our history. We got to get to know our environment. As you said earlier, the date of birth, start measuring from there.
That's right.
The solar energy, the solar cycles. Does anyone else? Okay, there's another question here.
So before your moon cycle, what could be the sign if you get bumps around the jaw and mouth? I know that part of the face is coming into stress or imbalance in the pelvic organ. So that could possibly mean that you've got, you might have cystic ovaries. It could mean that you get cysts on your ovaries. And so this is looking like potential imbalance with, you know, testosterone, and maybe other androgens. So that's one thing to consider. And looking at the other issues that may come up, but definitely usually like around the jaw, we are looking at reproductive health, and more times we'll talk about cystic wombs, cystic ovaries, you know. But in response, we must return to our ancient traditions. I'm going to answer that, Ashley. Ira, just give me 1 second. Sister Sharon, this work is about clearing the lineages. That's what it is. When you're working on the womb, when you're working on women, you know what I mean? Like this is a direct effect on lineages, you know. And when you're doing your work, and not just like, you know, light stuff, but when you really start to do the work, you're clearing for those behind you, and you're clearing for those ahead of you, right? Okay, so Ashley, you're saying, sorry, that you take sea moss every day and you eat ital. So there is a whole bunch of conversation happening around sea moss, okay, and the kind of sea moss that you're eating. That's the first thing. Okay, everyone, I'm just going to put a thumb on everybody's story here, right? Because there's different kinds of sea moss, and oftentimes people may not be consuming the right kind of sea moss. That's the first thing. And secondly, sea moss does carry, you know, a lot of minerals and vitamins, but the concentration is not as high as people think. So I have to just go in and say that one time, because right. So yeah, because I actually had a really big thing now. And you said you eat ital. So yes, the other thing is, you can be eating, and this is where people, like, this is why there's layers to this. You can be eating as clean as you want to be, but if you have a mineral deficiency, you have a mineral deficiency.
is what it is. Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? And so you will need to replenish. You need to understand what your issues are, um, and how they're showing up, and what minerals you need to be replenished. So I'm not saying that it's not coming from the islands. I'm saying that the moss that most people are consuming is the light colored moss, when it's actually the dark colored moss that has most of the nutrients that we're looking for, right?
And then
Because like
blood type
sorry,
even would play a role as well.
yeah,
How people interact with certain foods and what have you as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
Blood type.
yeah. There's a lot going on. So I mean, like I myself, like I maintain like a 95% ITAL diet, because I like to have my fish sometimes and ting and
Me
right,
too. Me
you
too.
know.
I haven't done that.
I give it on the front, you know. But and you know, and so you can have a very clean diet, but you can still suffer from an imbalance, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so this is where understanding like the herbs, and understanding the minerals, the trace minerals, you know what I mean, the oligo minerals, like there's so much more to it, and so that's where I would leave that conversation. Yeah, Dolce, the purple sema, exactly. Yeah, the
Yes.
purple sema.
Okay. So that's Dolce, the purple
Yeah.
sea moss.
So
Okay. Thank
yeah,
you for that, Steve.
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a lot. I mean, it's, and just, I mean, for Ashley, she might have joined in too, because we're looking at also not just, so sometimes you might be eating all the right foods, even doing the exercise and whatnot, but it's really adapting that awareness. What we've learned here today from Odessa is really to adapt that awareness of self, awareness
Mm-hmm.
of your history, awareness of your environment, awareness of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And I did throw in the map in there, because I remember when we met, it was, and I was going through a lot, as I said earlier, in the previous show, was my self-talk. I was like, you corrected me, and I said, I like this girl, because not much people, when I correct people's self-talk, or I hear it, and sometimes you get irritated by hearing something uniquely negative, you know what I'm saying, right? It's like, why did you just say that? Like, okay, do you want my help? Stop saying that, right?
Yeah.
And I went through you gauging that, that your self-talk. It's putting disease in your body. I've even
Oh yeah.
learned about, even with womb wellness, the health and the hygiene of one's vagina or whatever, is critical to your breast wellness.
Oh yeah.
It, like, because it
Look,
stimulates, it connects.
it's
So
very much
we're looking at
connected.
this holistically.
Yeah. You know, like even women can see, like when after a woman has a baby and she's breastfeeding, the act of breastfeeding is contracting the uterus.
That's right. They're that
It's
connected. It
This
contracts
is
it.
it. Within my program, there's a phase that we walk. So within the womb cleanse, right? There's 3 phases to it, and then the third phase is called the bomb method, which is the breast and ovary massage method, and it's a direct connection of massaging the breast and the uterus in particular ways, and
Yeah.
including the limbs and everything, because they are directly connected. You know what I mean? They're connected.
Trust me, I'm telling you, I'm seeing five whatever shrinks. It literally as well. Even like I'm watching all these things, and
Yeah,
again, and I like the fact that you stress to observe, observe, observe.
yeah,
How do
yeah.
you interact with these cycles?
That's right.
You got. And sometimes we say, "Oh, that's weird," but that always happens. No, we have to take note.
Slow down.
I think that journaling is key. I went aggressively as a January hit with my journaling.
That's okay. That's all
And I
right. You gotta
realized that's
start.
not my new year. That's what I've
That's
learned from you
okay.
today. It's not my new year.
But calculate it. So when is your Earth strong? When is your solar
August,
return?
August 15th.
Okay, August 15th. So right now you're at your halfway mark. You have entered into your third quarter, right?
Okay.
You're in your third quarter. And so how are you, right? So when you started in January, right? This was you ending the first half of your year. January 15th would have been the end of your first half. Well, no, August you said, so that puts you in February, right? February 15th would be the opposite of that, you know. So this is you coming to the end of your your second quarter. So now you've started your second half of the year, your third quarter. You know
But
what
I
I
gotta
mean?
switch up that cycle though. Like obviously, because there's a little bit, a couple things off, because it doesn't feel the way how you're describing it. It doesn't feel
No,
like I'm wrapping up, and you
no,
know.
you no, it's not going to. Yeah, you just have to, you're just going to observe it. You just observe and say, okay, between now and August. So normally we would say, okay, you know, like when you get to like September, you know, November, you really start to like, oh my gosh, end of year. So you're not there yet, but you're at your halfway point, right? So August, July, June, May. By the time you get to May, this is when you're going to be like, okay, this is my third quarter. Let me start to wrap up.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Let me see what's happening. Like that's how I feel in like.
I'm glad I'm aware, like right now, like how to really approach it and handle it and sort of engage with what I'm feeling, you know, and see how I can get that aligned up, you know.
Yeah.
Any questions from Twitter that has come through the pipeline?
Thank you, Queen. I learned a lot. I'm grateful. It's a pleasure to be here and share with you all. Like your audience is so like they just give a lot of love, you know. So it's really a pleasure to be
and we
here.
appreciate you. Trust me. I said, but in the interest of time, and I want to start do 2-hour show with you because of you. That should be like, Sherry,
Right?
you said
What
9
time
o'clock.
is it right now?
But it's like there's so much to touch. But I mean, I really appreciate you. Before we go, do we have any questions? On that something. Okay, and then I think there was a lot of them that were coming down the pipeline. And again, if you do want to put a private question, you can put in the question in the right-hand corner on Twitter and Instagram for Odessa Thornhill, womb wellness coach. Odessa, is there any topics that you might think that we want to talk about the next show that we could probably just get, you know, when you join us next month, April month?
Oh my goodness. Oh, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Okay, we'll get
like
there.
just, I mean, I think maybe we can even just go, maybe start talking about the chakras.
Yes.
Right? Because that will help us to put it together and start talking about vibrational medicine. You know what I mean? For us to really understand that. Because you said you touched on something and I was like, oh, is she ready for this? Because, you know, we talk about sound word power. You know what I mean? I just watched a clip the other day of Kanye. Listen, Kanye is brilliant. I don't know what he's doing right now. He's on some bullshit. Okay, but
he's up and down. What's the word? He's in entrainment.
You're right. He's entropy. You know, he's on entropy. But Kanye is brilliant. And Kanye, he said, I gotta find this clip and I'll send it to you. And he talks about the 808 and he talks about the vibration. He talks about the drums and hip hop. And he says what they have been doing is they have been putting distorted vibrations in the music. Ooh. That people can't hear, that's keeping the vibration of the people very low, right? And it always brings me back to, like, you know, when you know, if you were younger and you know, you want to go to the party and your religious parent would be like, no, they go and listen to that thing in your ear and that vibration and the sound and everything and it's the devil music, and that's exactly what it is. It's the truth. You know what I mean? I remember having a conversation with a DJ, and the DJ telling him he played one song and the people then went crazy. He didn't know what happened to them. They were not themselves.
Yes, certain vibrations. You know, so trust me.
This is it.
They even create the dance moves, the vibrations. They literally make your waist move a certain way.
Exactly. And so when we can understand, first of all, how reggae now, exactly. When we can recognize the electric and magnetic nature of who we are, right? When we understand sound and color, you know, like when you get up in the morning time and you want to put on green and you put on green and you don't want to wear green, you want to wear red, you know what I mean? And what these colors are representing. When we talk about, you know, the different levels of the energy chakras, the different age, brackets that everything is affected. We can go into that a little bit more, because like I find like people like to talk about, like the chakras, but it's like there's way more to it. Every chakra has an emotional, mental, spirit. Like every chakra has a layer. You know what I mean?
And they manifest like in these different, like they actually manifest. I know we touched a little bit even on the anxiety, like when I was talking about when I brought in about the map for you to talk about the map, but the anxiety could manifest like if I went through quite a few deaths at the beginning of the new year, and my face just broke out. Like it was just like, it manifested, and these are the things that we have to learn how to be able to control. I guess our response. I guess you were saying. I think and
even if you have to give yourself permission to respond, but then how do you support it? You know what I mean? Right. That's the other thing too. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think maybe we can do that.
Yeah, definitely. And I do remember one of the other topics that I do want to talk about next show is wearing latex condoms. If I could show you what it did. I saw what it did to my hands. I'm allergic to latex. And so to rubber trees, I'm allergic to shea butter. And I thought I could wear the latex glove for 2 seconds. And that thing chewed up my nails and like it ate through. So I clearly should stay away from latex condoms. So I really want to talk about that. I meant to send you the picture, but like just to see what it did to this strong skin. You know about all the different types of skin in the vagina and what's on our hand. If it did this to me, is this what's contributing to my fibroids? I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't want to claim them because they're shrinking. I'm doing some food magic, food science, So that would be something that we can, and I don't know if any of our listeners want to submit any topics that they want to talk about the next show, you could submit it into Roots Reggae Hub. And also, Odessa, if you could just tell our listeners and viewers how they can stay in touch with you, enjoy your podcast, and what have you.
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Cultivate Your Own Wellness. And my website is under construction, so that's cultivateyourown.com. But I've also just released my podcast called The Empowered Womb. And so the Empowered Womb podcast can be found on Google, Spotify, and Apple. And so I'll be releasing a new podcast every week. The immediate focus will be on womb wellness, reproductive health, very much about how women can prepare their bodies for healthy pregnancies and create more peaceful periods. But I will be integrating a lot more of these sciences and using this platform to talk more about like these kinds of conversations and really just get people to recognize their power and their worth.
Yes. That's beautiful. Yeah. And if you could, just for our listeners, just spell out your links as well. If you could just spell it out.
Sure. CULTIVATEYOUROWN Wellness, WELLNESS. Cultivate Your Own Wellness. And my name is Odessa Thornhill.
Okay,
like
exactly.
The two cities.
So that these things are important for us to just stay in touch with each other. And again, thank you, Odessa, for sharing with us. It's a whole Pandora box that has been opened. I hope I could just stabilize it because, like, to be able to, there's so many topics, and like one topic alone, just to learn about the lunar cycle and just the intricity that you bring to the table. I appreciate you so much. Because things that you question, that, should I be paying attention to this? Or is someone going to think I'm weird? All of these things, I love how in some of your podcasts, how you connect it to scriptures that, that are actually telling you the truth, but it's been skewed a certain way, you know, but it's talking about the zodiacs. It's talking about, you know, these stones and these precious gems and even ways how to connect to it. Again, we do have access to all these things. It's just about unlearning it, and we appreciate people like yourself who have taken the years, 20 years plus to study and bring womb wellness to the forefront. Any shout outs that you would like to share with our listeners and viewers before we go?
Well, I want to big up yourself and big up Roots Reggae Hub. And I think just, you know, due diligence to give homage to the member who has passed away. You started off the conversation mentioning her name. I'll leave you to mention the
Damarie.
Right, Damarie.
Damarie Marjorie Nicholson.
Yeah, just want to, you know, send that respect to her and her family. And in this time, you know, but it's also important for us to recognize that we all come knowing that we will leave, you know, and I think our biggest our biggest responsibility is to live out our purpose, you know, because we don't know the day or the time, but we know it's going to come. And whereas pop culture has us thinking, you know, not tomorrow, not tomorrow, not don't worry about tomorrow, you know what I mean? You have to live your fullest right now, you know, because when you've passed on, when you've transitioned, you know what I mean, that what you've done is what you've done, you know. So I just want to just, you know, give that respect to her and her family.
Thank
and
you.
to
And to those that even have lost the battle with cancer. Ashe.
Ashe.
This is your host, Lady Sharon, signing out with Odessa Thornhill, Doctorate of Natural Medicine from Cultivate Your Own Wellness. One love. And happy International Women's Day.
Women's Day.
Women's Month.
Ashe. Ashe.
Yes, big up to all the women, mothers of civilization. Big up yourself.
That's right. Big up yourself. All right.
One love.
Take care. All right. Peace.
Yes, this video will be saved, and you guys will be able to get more information, and we'll put all the links in the video.